Great. Welcome, everyone. I am Lisa Raposo. I am happy to introduce day three of our webinar, our lunch hour webinar series. I am the executive director at the SUNY Center for Professional Development. And just wanted to kind of mention that our annual webinar series, PD Week, we've actually been doing for 8 years now. So really happy to bring this to everyone. There will be an evaluation that gets sent out at the end of the week. So really appreciate your input. And if you have any suggestions for sessions you might want to see at future PD weeks. I know we've actually talked about maybe perhaps doing another one in the spring because they are very, very popular. So this is really our public awareness campaign, highlighting professional development, lifelong learning, personal growth, and how that ties into career and organizational success. So if you were with us on Monday, we did do a session on Microsoft Copilot. I'm mentioning that because recordings for the sessions are going to be posted. So if you missed that and wanted to go back, we will be sending out a link to the playlist of recordings on the CPD YouTube channel. You can also search SUNY CPD videos, and you can actually follow the channel and you'll see when new things get posted. But Monday we did Microsoft Copilot. Yesterday had a terrific session on imposter syndrome and strategies for overcoming that. Tomorrow, our Director of Educational Development, Chris Price, and some other colleagues will be talking about some free professional development resources available to faculty and staff across SUNY through several partnerships that we have in place. So that'll be tomorrow. And then Friday, Madeline Kaplan, our Manager of Communications and Community Engagement, she will be doing a session on connecting with communities of practice throughout SUNY and learning about how you might want to create your own community of practice. And that's done through our SUNY Learning Commons, which is powered by Viva Engage. So I also just wanted to mention, I haven't done that yet, Madeline, this week, but I just wanted to thank Madeline for all her planning and coordination for this week. So it's been terrific. So thank you, Madeline. Let's see. I am happy to introduce our speaker today, and she will be introducing our topic. It is Carolyn Matisky. She is the director of the SUNY SAIL Institute, which is part of the SUNY Center for Professional Development. Long biography posted on the website, but I just wanted to mention that Carolyn has over 20 years of experience in professional development, adult learning, curriculum development. She is certified. She's a certified DISC trainer. She also is certified in our Crucial Conversations series, which is mastering dialogue, crucial accountability, as well as getting things done. So happy to have Carolyn here today. And Carolyn, I'll turn things over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Madeline, and I'm pleased to be with you all today. Today's topic is how successful people remain calm. And so I want to start this off by sharing a little bit more about who I am and why am I bringing this topic to my larger SUNY colleague audience today. Typically, if you're in a meeting with me, you see the professional headshot, right? And Lisa read my bio, a bit of it, but I want to bring more of my whole self into this because we're not just workers. We are, people who have, family and lives outside of the workplace. And so a lot of the strategies that we're talking about, it's my attempt over the 20 years that I've been doing this to try to balance both parts of myself. And so I have been at this and I stay at it because stress is inevitable. It's not something to really avoid altogether. It's something to be able to channel so that you can be productive and be able to have the energy for the things that are right in front of you. And sometimes we're at work and it has to be channeled towards your work. And when we're at home and we want to be present for the people that we love, we want to be able to be able to have that energy left over for them as well.
September refund checks have been about phone.
All right. So this is who I am. On the home front, I have two amazing children, a 16-year-old son who is driving with his learner's permit now. So, that takes a little bit of energy to be able to teach him the rules of the road and keep us all safe. I also have an 11-year-old sixth grade daughter, and there we are running the Troy Turkey Trot this year. That's sort of our tradition. And then we've got some pets at home. So our fluffy cat Tina and our two dogs Gigi and Jackson. So here I am, and during the day, I have the privilege of serving as the director for the SAIL Institute, the Strategic Academic and Innovative Leadership Institute, which is a part of the fantastic CPD umbrella of services. So, what are we going to do for the next 50 minutes or so? I want to take you through the four levels of leadership so that you can sort of see where this work of self-management fits in to professional development. Share some best practices that are from research and some well-founded work in this area. And I'm going to leave you with a self-assessment so that you can check in with yourself on how you're doing in some of these basic best practices. And I'm also going to give you a well-being menu that you can put together. That's your sort of personalized action plan. All right. So, when I get to work with SUNY colleagues on leadership development, which is most of my work, we spend a lot of time at the very bottom of this diagram in the personal mastery phase. So no one wants to work for someone who doesn't have self-awareness, right? So it is critical and foundational for us to understand ourselves before we can expect others to be able to follow us in the ways we need them to. So we're going to spend a lot of time in personal mastery in our SAIL programs, and that's where we are here. Once you have that down, you can shift into being able to manage interpersonal communication, manage a team, and then, this is a very large, vast SUNY system. So hopefully we can, if it's in our career goals, be able to lead and manage change on a system level. And so here we are with the four levels of leadership. We're going to focus today on understanding ourselves. All right. So this body of work fits into what is known as EQ. You may hear emotional intelligence, and that is arguably more important than IQ. And so this is a topic I love to talk about, and emotional intelligence, or EQ, is made up of these four pieces. So we're going to talk today about the self-management piece, right? We're talking about how to remain calm when we're managing in a very stressful environment, a very stressful world. And so this aspect of emotional intelligence, self-management, is an important piece to it. So the work that I'm going to present to you today is largely inspired by an author in emotional intelligence. He's well known as an expert, Dr. Travis Bradberry. The first version of his book came out, I think it was in the 90s. And so that's Emotional Intelligence 2.0. And if you buy the hard copy, which is still for sale, you can take a personalized assessment. So I think the book is between $20 and $25, and it also comes with that personal assessment. So you can go online and you can see where you fall in each of those four areas of emotional intelligence, and it's very detailed. Just came out just this year with a new version of the book, and it's called The New Emotional Intelligence. And if you purchase that, you can also take that online assessment. So buy it new if you want to take the assessment. But it's an excellent resource and it's really going to take you through those 4 quadrants. If you're looking for free resources, right? You're here for the free webinar. That's fantastic. There are still a lot you can get. If you follow him on LinkedIn, so I've been following him for years, and he'll have links to articles and really fantastic posts and things to get you thinking about emotional intelligence. So if you're not on LinkedIn, or if you are and just not following him, I really encourage looking into what he posts. All right, so self-awareness. So here's a diagram to help us sort of understand, where this is all grounded. So our self-awareness is how we see ourselves. We also have to think about our awareness of others and who's around us. That helps us to be able to have those important social skills. So being able to take actions that are effective with other people. But it also includes our own actions of being able to regulate ourselves. So that's where we're going to spend some time, is this self-regulation piece. So what are those things, those practical things that I can do to be able to manage my own stress levels? Okay. Got a few pull-out quotes from Dr. Bradbury's work. He says that it is not a nice to have, it's a foundational skill set that is critical for being successful in this changing world. And I would agree with him. So these are really important pieces if you want to be in a workplace where people connect with you and you have that important social awareness and ability to manage your stress, your own stress levels, so that you can have that ability to help others. People who are high in IQ are better equipped to handle pressure, stress, and the unexpected. And these are the qualities that are among our top performers. So I've got some good news about this, and that is that EQ is not fixed like IQ. So with deliberate effort, anyone can develop and strengthen it. So let's do that, right? We want to first look at the science. What is the psychology and neuroscience behind all of this so that we can take practical steps to be able to improve our EQ? So if you're interested in the full article, that is available on the Talent Smart website. I'm also going to share this slide deck and a handout that has a link to the article in it. But it is there. I'm going to do a very quick version of what are those top 10 behaviors for remaining calm under pressure. And I love this to be able to sort of ground us. Successful people aren't calm by accident. They use strategies to protect their emotional energy. And I think the more you become comfortable with what these 10 behaviors are, you're going to see that if you just sort of pay attention to these things, that is a way for you to be able to protect your emotional energy, to focus on what is in front of you in the moment. If it's at work, it's the work. If it's at home, you've got the reserves left over because you've managed the things that you can control. All right, so the science behind all of this is that there is a reduction in your cortisol levels, 23% to be exact, by intentionally shifting your focus to what you are grateful for. And this isn't just an overall, oh, I'm a positive person. This is being specific about what it is you are grateful for. So one way that I did this, I sort of fallen out of practice with this, but it really did help me for the year plus that I was doing it. And you can do this in any way that works for you. What worked for me is before I would put my feet on the ground in the morning, I would wake up, I would specifically think about 3 things that I was grateful for. And every day it's different. A lot of days it would have to do with the comfort of my bed or my pillow, but 3 specific things in my life that I appreciate. And it really does work. So there's science behind this. It's an attitude of gratitude, but it's practicing it. It's finding a way to really practice it and do it on a daily basis. All right. So without reading this article, I wouldn't have known that like thinking about the what could go wrong things is so bad. But Dr. Bradbury points out that if we have this what if, and catastrophizing things, it's really not good for our personal stress levels. So we really try to limit that. It's good to have an emergency plan, a contingency plan for things, but allowing yourself to go down that rabbit hole of negative thinking about things that aren't even in front of you, worrying about the thing that hasn't happened yet is not a good use of our energy. So, trying to stop ourselves when we do it, maybe allowing it to happen for a period of time, but then ending it, but having a strategy to just not let it spiral out of control. Okay. Um, One of the tips is to be able to reset our brain. We need to give our brain a break from negative thoughts, and we have to figure out a way to sort of reset it and to give it a rest. And so one way they outline is to you know put artwork on your walls, or if every day when I come into my office, I have daily inspirational quotes and there are so many in there. I've been doing this for over a year and still have lots of quotes there. So I reset myself and I think about something intentionally positive. And this also works when you're upset. If you get bad news. If you look at your screensaver on your phone or on your computer, or a quote that's on your wall, but something to intentionally give your brain a break from negativity. Maybe it's the vacation on your calendar, right? Isn't that amazing if you can think about something fun that's up ahead? Or if you've got, your child or your baby at home smiling, seeing a picture of that will really snap your brain out of that negativity and give it a break. So, one of the programs that I have the privilege of working on is the CIO Leadership Academy. And I've talked to that group over the years about disconnecting. And that's probably one of the harder audiences to convince. I think, over the 8 years that I've been here, it's easier now. But 8 years ago, when we said disconnect, that was a really difficult conversation. A lot of people did not feel comfortable to fully disconnect, but there is science behind taking that break from being plugged in to all of the responsibilities that come with our important roles. So maybe you do it in small increments to become more comfortable with it, but it is important to be able to find that time where you're completely free of it. So going on a hike or taking a walk after work, or maybe you start with just one day a week for a few hours, maybe Sunday morning. But being able to disconnect is really important for you to be able to, when you are back together with your team and with the people that you're serving, to be able to give them your best. So try it slowly if that's something that's difficult for you. All right, this one was difficult for me. But limiting caffeine. And I love my morning coffee. I cut myself off at noon. I'm not saying that's what you have to do, but just an awareness that there is science behind what happens to your body when you have this caffeine in your system. So it releases adrenaline, and that is the source of the fight, flight, or freeze response. So back, in our primitive days, that helped us stay alive if there was a wild animal about to attack us. But in today's modern world, when we get that negative email or Teams chat that just catches you at the wrong moment, we're hyper aroused and our brain, goes into a response that it doesn't have our rational thinking, right? It's that emotional fight or flight response that's there, and that's not showing our best. So, being able to limit the caffeine is going to help with releasing that adrenaline. So, keeping yourself a little bit more calm. All right, so we're going through 10 of these best practices, right? And this one I would say is my personal super strength. I get a good night's sleep, and I'm sorry, I apologize to those of you who battle sleep. I know there are so many people that really struggle with being able to get good quality sleep. And you don't have to be good at all of these things, but these are just things that we want to have an awareness of. If we can make small improvements, it makes a big deal, a big difference. So the article that Dr. Bradbury writes is that stressful projects often make you feel like you have no time to sleep, but taking the time to get a decent night's sleep is the one thing keeping you from getting things under control. He wants us to do this. It is simple, but it's sometimes very difficult. This really lets your brain recharge, causing you to wake up. You're alert, you're clear-headed, and we all know that feeling when we don't get a good night's sleep. So focusing on our sleep health is important, and it's an investment in you. And I wish you all a good night's rest tonight. All right, so here's another one. Some people struggle in this more than others, but it's allowing those internal messages, the things we say to ourselves, the way we talk to ourselves, to be negative. And sometimes we're not even aware of it. So it's just an awareness of how we're speaking to ourselves. Would we speak to our children or, little kids, this way? Sometimes we are harsh to ourselves, and we've got to try to stop that in its tracks. So what I am going to do is read you all Walter Wintel's famous quote. So it's a bit of a poem. So thinking, it's called Thinking. If you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you like to win, but you think you can't, it's almost certain you won't. If you think you'll lose, you've lost. For out of the world we find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you are outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win a prize. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster person, but sooner or later, the person who wins is the one who thinks they can. All right, so I switched the gender in there since it was focused on men, but I like that, and it's important to really just have an awareness of how we're talking to ourselves in overly critical ways. It is not helpful, and we've got to try to think about that a little bit more and be nicer to ourselves. All right, so there is a wonderful course that the CPD offers a discount to, which is Getting Things Done. And that course made a big difference for me to be able to think about things a little bit differently. One of the behaviors that Dr. Bradbury points out is to be able to stop letting our mind go into all of the things we must do, and to stop for a moment and write down a list of the things that we need to do. So we all know that feeling, that monkey brain feeling where we're thinking, I'm sitting here at work and I'm thinking about the things I need to do tonight to have dinner executed, and the things I need to do to make sure that my kids have what they need. But like we're thinking about all of the many things that we must do. And that's overwhelming. So writing it down, and I mentioned that course because it gives a very helpful routine and regular way to be able to manage that. So getting things done, really, if that's something that you really struggle with this and you're looking for a sort of methodology on how to do it, is great. But finding a software or a way to do this, I've got lots of Post-its. I try to move away from the Post-its and have it in a system, but I love my Post-its. But thinking about a way for you to just take 5 minutes, brain dump, write all the things you have to do so that you can be present again and that you can focus on the task at hand instead of having three things in your mind going at once. Okay, lean on your support system. And for many of you that I'm working with in SAIL programs, we've got mentorship included in aspects of the program. So I would say connect with your mentor. If you don't have a mentor, find a mentor. This is really important for your own success and for your own ability to manage stress, right? As we get higher in the organizational chart, there are less people around us that we can naturally share some of these stresses with, the challenges. So being able to have a bench of people, or at least one person that we can go to in those times where we have to have someone else see the problem for us and can connect to be able to help us see through the trees. So find your support system, schedule time to have coffee with them or go on a walk or just a Zoom call. But lean on your support system because it's really important, especially as we get higher in our leadership, to be able to have a bench of people that we can call on in times of need. All right. At this point in the program, I would love to see some data of who's in the audience here. And so my first poll, I have two poll questions. This is the first one. I want you to select your top two strategies. So you're going to see a summary of those 10 behaviors that we just walked through. But what are the top two that you are already doing well? So I told you I'd be picking sleep for sure, but I want to see if you can select your top two. That would be great. All right, I can see we've got 60% of the audience has put their votes in. We're going to leave this up for at least another 30 seconds, see how we do. It looks like we've got a pretty well-rounded set of responses. All right, 10 more seconds and we'll close it. We've got 80% of the audience has voted. This is great. All right, Madeline, I'm going to close it. Is that okay?
Yes. Also,
Okay.
if no one was able, if anyone was not able to see the poll, if you hit the more button, the option to open the polls and quizzes tab should open, but there'll be another poll to participate in at some point.
Great. Okay, I'm going to share these results with everyone. And you can see we've got the highest response rate in practicing gratitude. That is awesome. So 35% there. Not so much in the avoid asking what if. So we've got maybe a lot of people who work in risk management, and this is just maybe a natural way that you're thinking. You're thinking about those what if, what could go wrong, because that's what your job is sort of encouraging you to think about. We've got a lot of people who are able to shift their mind to staying positive. That's great. 11% of us are able to successfully disconnect, and you would put that as your top two practice. That's interesting. 20% of you limit your caffeine. Good for you. 28%, we've got good sleepers in the house. Pretty good results on interrupting the negative self-talk, 13%. 21% can reframe their perspective. That's excellent. Breathing and staying present. Awesome. And then 21% using their support system. So interesting, interesting. So these 10 behaviors we're going to see again in our next poll. I want you to let me know what are the, let me see if I can advance the slide here. I want you to let me know what are the two areas that you would like to see improvement in. So use those check boxes, select one or two things in the next month that you'd like to focus more intentional effort towards improving. Okay, we were almost up to 80% of you who have voted. If you haven't yet, please get your vote in. We're going to close this poll. All right, we're going to close it now and see our results. What is everyone here going to be focused on in the next month, this busy month of December, where it's hard to focus on anything else other than, preparing to take some time away? Practicing gratitude, a good number of you. Avoid asking what if. These are all pretty strong. I see 27% is a large response for being able to disconnect. So good luck with that. I think, with the holidays, there are a lot of other people who are disconnecting for those weeks. And so you may be very successful because, you're not going to come back to a flooded inbox, more than maybe in another month. Um, 10% are going to limit their caffeine. Oh, 29% really want to focus on their sleep. I hope that you can do that. I find this time of year to be a little bit easier for that just because the colder weather makes it easier for me to sleep. So hopefully you find some success there. Crack the window maybe. Interrupt negative self-talk. We've got a lot of you who want to focus on that. And I think that yesterday's presentation, if you were there for that, Juan Carlos maybe gave some very practical strategies on how to be able to get over some of those negative messages we've been telling ourselves. Reframing our perspective, that's a pretty good group of you who want to be able to do that. Um, and I know that you can. So, lean on your support system. I see we've got a good number who want to be able to stay present and use their support system. These are all good things, and I know you can do it. Um, and you're in the right place with the CPD and SAIL to be able to find resources and courses and other ways to be able to focus on this. So we've got our mindful leadership course. Actually, registration is open for that to begin in January again. So, there are lots of ways that you can do this. It doesn't have to be a paid course. Maybe it's a podcast or following somebody on LinkedIn like a Travis Bradberry. So someone who inspires you to be able to focus on these things and have a little bit more intentionality behind it. All right. So if you are already in a leadership position, what I want to leave you with is a team challenge. So something you can bring back to your team to focus on some of this self-care stuff. I know I've been through some personal stressful situations over the past few years where I found myself empty, not because of anything that was happening on the job, but just personal challenges. And I was an empty cup. I didn't have anything left to pour out. And so I want to make sure that in the work that I do, I give you all strategies to acknowledge that. If you're managing other humans, people are going through tough times, tough things. And, being the person, the manager who has the ability to empower and support, our other humans with us to be able to do this is important work. So one way you can do this is a team challenge I give you, is to nominate one person on the team each week and ask them what is the thing that they like to do, right? So for me, I like to ski in the winter or run in the good weather. I'm a fair weather runner. But so for me, it would be doing that and just making sure that I get that in. But ask each person, what is it for them? Do they play an instrument? Sorry. But what is it that that person really enjoys doing where they lose track of time? It's their mindful activity, knitting or writing or whatever it may be. Maybe it's shopping. It's a good time to pick them. So lots to shop for. But ask them to focus on their self-care in the week ahead and then come back the next week and let the rest of the group know, how did it go? What did you do? And then that person nominates someone else on the team. So this is great for being able to improve your culture. You're really taking a caring approach to get to know each other, accepting that people achieve this self-care in different ways, and that is all good. And it's a prioritizing the health and well-being of each other. It doesn't take any extra time away from productivity at work. It's a way of just recognizing that there are human needs that we all have, and we can't pour from an empty cup. So take care of yourself and help the other people if you are in a position of power and, have other people who report up to you. Give them this challenge. Make sure that they're taking care of themselves. All right. Another activity that I would like you to do, and you can do this on a scrap piece of paper or an open Word document now, but we will be sending you a handout as a follow-up to today's program. And one of the pages on that is this menu. So this is a Refuel and Thrive menu. And what I would love to do is have these all over either at your workspace or if it's on your refrigerator at home. But I want you to think about what are the things that you can do, like playing the guitar or knitting or running or skiing, whatever those are, just put them all down on a piece of paper. You're not going to very likely be able to do all of those that would fill up the menu in one day. But what I want you to do is have it easily visible so that every single day you can look at it and look at this like a menu that you can pick one or two things. Maybe they're calling a loved one or friend and having a conversation. Doesn't take a lot of time, or it could take a lot of time, and you really enjoy it. But things that you can accomplish on a daily basis so that when you are feeling like your cup is empty, you can recharge. So it is not selfish to do this. This is just trying to prioritize it and make it easy for you to actually put into practice on a regular basis. So take a few moments, write down, let's see here. There, we've got 12 items on your menu. So try to get to 12. You don't have to do it all today. We're going to send the handout. You can fill it up. You can, start to add things as maybe there's new activities, like if somebody buys you a puzzle for the holidays and you really enjoy that puzzle, put puzzles on the menu. But we're always trying to figure out what are the things that refuel us. So I'm intentionally being quiet to give you time to think about your menu and what you're going to put on yours. I just want to know from my team. I've got Madeline here. Hopefully she doesn't mind me asking her what's on your menu, Madeline.
Honestly, when you mentioned puzzles, that was a big one. Going on walks, that is another big one. Even though it's cold, even just going down to the stop sign at the end of my street and back is enough to just completely reset me for a while.
Good. Lisa, I know you're still on the call, right?
Yeah, I'm here. I was just thinking that I I tend to disconnect. Like I don't follow social media, I in the evening I just try to, not be on my phone, right? So I really try to do that. Just put that aside, especially at like 9 o'clock or so. That light from a computer or light from your phone, that'll disrupt sleep. So I always just try to disconnect and put that aside.
Good. Thought you were going to say pickleball.
Oh, yes, that too. Exercise always helps. It helps with sleep too. Yeah.
Well, I know that this was a topic that really resonated with people, and I was happy to hear that the registration was so high for this topic. It tells me a lot, though, about where we are as a collective. And, stress levels are high. This is a stressful time for people, over the holidays. It's a joyful time, but it's also a time that's, more and more emotionally charged for people. So I think that it's important that we're offering, an opportunity to just get into a dialogue and think about this for ourselves. We want to be able to take care of ourselves, and we want to be able to, if we are in a position of leadership, make sure that the other people that we're working with and we care about are taking care of themselves as well. So while these are, basic, they're simple things like breathing, right? Sleeping. Um, but they're things that when we're busy, we think we don't have time for. And they ultimately become the things that, if we do have intentionality behind them, that can make the biggest difference. And that's what this book points out. So these aren't, things you don't know. You don't know that you know that they're important, but being able to figure out ways to give them the priority and the importance in your daily routine is important. All right, so I'm going to try to shift my attention to the chat here because I think we've got some good stuff
We
going on.
do. Mhm.
And anything, you all have been monitoring a little bit closer than I have. Anything that jumps out that you want to start with?
I have a
Yeah,
few
somebody,
questions that
Okay,
oh,
I've taken note of.
great.
Thank you to Joseph for sending them to me directly. Someone asked if there was a link to a list of mentors.
Mm, mm. Well, we do not have a list of people who are serving as a mentor, but I know that our Director of Educational Services, Chris Price, is working to develop a community of practice for mentoring across SUNY. So there are pockets of people across the system who are already running mentoring programs, and we want to bring those people together, people who have this interest in mentoring and how we can learn from each other and just encourage it in all of those different spaces and places across SUNY. So there is work in this area. What I would say to you, if you're like just today, like, hey, I need a mentor, be bold enough and brave enough to find the person who's sort of inspired you. Right? It's different for everybody, right? Your style of leader that you're going to be attracted to or that you want to emulate their values and how they lead is different than the way that I would be. So find that person that really hits it for you and be bold enough to ask them, hey, could I take you out for a cup of coffee in the next month? I know you're busy, but just want to have a conversation, right? And it doesn't have to be more than that. It could just be a time to sit and talk with them that's not really labeled mentoring, but you're putting them in that camp, right? And it doesn't have to be just one person. It could be you want to focus on somebody who's maybe really good at leading from the middle, right? They're in this middle management and they're doing really well, and that is important for you. But you also see someone who leads with maybe humility in a way that you want to be able to do. And so you can have multiple people. I would say be bold enough to find the person that inspires you and just ask them to have some time.
We have another question. Someone asked, how do you take breaks and still be productive and not give the impression that you're slacking?
Hmm. It's a good question. How do you take breaks without giving the impression that you're slacking? Um, well, breaks are important. You're legally entitled to a break, New York State law. So, however you want to use your break is, your prerogative. Uh, and I think that especially as a leader, if you're modeling the behavior, that's important because it sets the tone for the rest of the team, right? You're showing that getting out for a walk at lunch is important. It's important for you, it's important for them. So that's how I'm sort of thinking about it. Anything you would want to add, Lisa? I know you've been at this leadership game for a long time.
yeah, I did respond in the chat. It is more of a cultural type of thing as well. So, I do think leaders have to model that, and know that people are, entitled to a break. They can't be online every single moment. You know, if you get a chat message, you know, you got to have grace with knowing people might not be right there. So yeah, it's more of kind of a organizational culture issue, but make sure to be bold and say, you know, tell your team, I'm going out for a walk, right? I'm taking a break. And that will allow other people to feel safe to do so as well.
Good. What other questions, Madeline?
One more. Someone asked, how do you politely tell people to stay out of your boundaries or when people interrupt, especially if you're not in charge?
Well, we're creeping into crucial conversations territory. Uh, so there's a book that you can purchase called Mastering Dialogue, Crucial Conversations for Mastering Dialogue. It's 20 or $25. If you don't have it on your bookshelf, and you are in leadership, I would suggest that is a resource because it will help you, but also you can loan it out to anyone that comes to you that's struggling. We also have discounted licenses for that course. So boundaries, I would say that's a really charged and difficult question to answer in this format without jumping right into the full model of crucial conversations. It's also a lifetime bit of work for a lot of us is being able to have healthy boundaries. So maybe seeing someone who does it really well. I remember, living with a neighbor who she just did that naturally. And so I would just try to talk to her and ask her questions. Um, so yeah, finding people that are willing to just talk to you when you notice that they're doing some of this and they don't even think about it. It's just their natural way. Um, I find that helpful. I love to learn from other people.
Someone also asked if you could put the title of the Crucial Conversations book in the chat.
Sure, I can definitely do that. What I like about that book, and that's one of the certifications that Lisa was telling you that I have, is that it's not like you read the book and put it away and you never think about it again. It leaves you with a summary of very practical strategies to be able to um, get through a conversation that is difficult. And we define crucial conversation when the stakes are high, there are opposing opinions, and emotions run high. So when you find yourself in a crucial conversation, there are ways that you can think about the dialogue before you even get into the conversation to help you be more successful in it. And then ways that you can make sure the other person that you're in the conversation with feels safe to be in that conversation with you, right? So that's two whole chapters of the book is maintaining safety in the dialogue. So just an awareness of what is the intention, what is your own intention, and where might we be able to find a solution that is a little bit higher level than what we initially thought we were going to go in talking about. Um, so just a couple of snippets without getting into the full 9 chapters. All right. Any other questions that came through on the chat that we wanted to address?
No other questions in the chat, but if people want to unmute and ask a question, they can now.
Great. Great. And I know we did the poll questions here. In the follow-up materials to this program, I'm going to stop sharing because that's really the end of my slide deck. But we're also going to give you a self-assessment. So I've taken the 10 behaviors that Dr. Bradbury wrote about and put them in an easy self-assessment where you can grade yourself. This is an area of exceptional behavior already, something that you're doing, as the kids would say, mid, and an area that you want to focus on. So you can grade yourself, and then quickly look at what are you doing really well, what are the areas that you want to focus on, and then use that to say, okay, these are the one or two things that I really want to work on in the next month or in the year ahead. And it's going to change from year to year. So just checking in with yourself. I've been working with this article from the original book for a long time now, but it's still relevant, and I go back to it, and every year it's a little different. Depends on what your life looks like. Oh, it's nice to hear that, Christine. This was a good way to disconnect. Awesome. All right.
Good afternoon. Sorry to interrupt. I do have a question. You mentioned earlier the Getting Things Done course. Could you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. So it's actually the same producers of professional development content as the Crucial Conversations for Mastering Dialogue course. So it's a company called Crucial Learning, and there are 5 courses that CPD has negotiated a contract to get discounts for. Anyone who's working at SUNY can get a discounted license for online learning in one of the 5 courses. So there's Crucial Conversations for Mastering Dialogue, and one of the others is Getting Things Done. It doesn't take quite as long. The Crucial Conversations, which is by far the most popular, is about 7 hours of learning. Getting Things Done, I think, is around like 5 hours. And there's a science behind how to be able to stop that anxiety in your brain where you're thinking like you're overwhelmed with all the things that you have to get done. So it gives you a way to sort of systematically be able to manage that, like empty your brain of it, writing, like I talked about writing a list, right? So that's one of the things is be able, as you get a task, write it down, and like your system is the same. So you're always capturing everything. You don't have the fear that you're gonna like miss one of those tasks. And it doesn't have to be one software that you're using to do it. It has to just be a system that works for you. But the whole course walks you through it so that you leave with a way to be able to manage the tasks that you have both at work, at home, and post-its everywhere. Sort of get rid of the hodgepodge approach to being able to get your work and your tasks completed. Okay. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute. I know, if we put people in breakouts, we're going to risk losing you. So we're going to do this to see if there are any questions to bring for the whole group here.
I have a question. Have you been aware of like online chat rooms or like good places to like connect with someone who might, want to do that type of regular meeting? I work in isolation a lot with my writing. I was wondering about just networking that anyone might have been aware of.
What sort of conversations and connections are you trying to make with people?
I like what you said about just people discussing because it can be my writing can get difficult, and just for people to share the basic stories about like, oh, well, I was trying to do this and it was hard for me, and so here's what I did to get back on track with it, and then the other person would share that, just whatever it is, whether it's bowling or reading or I don't know whether that type of thing would be. I could Google that myself as well.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think. I mean, in the programs that we offer through the CPD and SAIL, we have groups that are all being mentored. Like, I don't know if you work in IT, right? So one of the programs that we do this very successfully with is the CIO Leadership Academy, and people are in a group under the support of a mentor, a seasoned CIO. And that starts to happen naturally in those groups. They all work in the same industry. in higher ed. And so that's wonderful. I don't know if that would really be something for you. And in
Um, I do academic writing and I teach at SUNY.
Yeah, yeah, we've got a lot of communities of practice, and I'm just wondering if maybe one of those there would be a category that's helpful to you. I think we have, do we have a listing of our communities of practice, Lisa, that we can easily share?
We do. I'll pull that. Madeline keeps that
Great.
on the CPD website.
Great. Yeah, and I think most of those groups are using Viva Engage, which is one of the Microsoft products to be able to, have a technology um, environment to be able to do that.
Thank you. This is a very good workshop. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you were here. Sure. Well, I know we've got 2 minutes left, but I just want to thank everyone for taking an hour for yourself. And if you are in a position of authority with other people, these are important things for a leader to be aware of, to be able to bring back to your team in a way that really works for them. So you're going to have the slide deck and also a handout with the self-assessment and your menu. So I hope that the menu you find helpful and you do what makes you happy and be able to wake up each day rested, refreshed, be able to tackle the problem that's going to surface. We know that challenges are always going to be there. Change is inevitable. That's the one thing we can count on. And so these practices, while they seem simple, are really important. And I just encourage you to take the time for yourself to be able to do the things that we know are important to keep ourselves fueled and thriving. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope to see you all at another program in the future.
Of